Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the inaugural State of Separation Impact Report. My name is Tamara O'Dine. I'm a journalist and anchor at the ABC here in Melbourne, and it's my great pleasure to be your MC for today's event. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and honouring the traditional owners and ongoing custodians of the land that we're all meeting on this afternoon, the Bunurong Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, and I want to pay my respects to their elders past and present. I first came into contact with the Separation Report back in 2020 when, after my own separation and divorce, I made a podcast for the ABC with one of my colleagues there. We called it The Good Divorce because we wanted to investigate whether that was even remotely possible. And if you've been through a separation and or divorce yourself, you would understand why we wanted to look into that a little bit further. And the short answer is, yes, it is possible, but you absolutely need to have the right support to be able to do it. In the few years since I made that podcast, the Separation Guide has been busily drawing together the information that it's collected from its clients, and it's produced a unique and really, really valuable snapshot of the effect that separation and divorce is having on individuals and families and on the wider community in general. Today, we'll be hearing all about what they've found and how to better manage the effects and impacts of the end of a marriage. We've also assembled a terrific panel of specialists who are at the coalface of separation and divorce, and they'll be sharing their insights with us about their experiences, their observations and ideas to help make this messy business a whole lot easier for everybody. And then after that, we will have the opportunity for another catch-up and a chat down the back and have some refreshments as well.
Thank you everyone for coming today to join us for this opening of this report. Before I get started into the findings from the report, I thought I'd just start by telling you a little bit about the Separation Guide and why we created it. The Separation Guide aims to help as many Australians as possible through one of life's most misunderstood and challenging life events, a separation and divorce. We are a divorce technology platform created to support the entire ecosystem of separation. That's the individuals, the professionals and support services that support them, and those affected by the downstream impacts of separation, and that's largely government, health funds, super funds, and employers. In order for people to experience a good divorce, as Tamara talked about, we believed there needs to be a shift in process and behaviours across the entire ecosystem to deliver a more collaborative, human-centred solution for consumers. As people work through each phase of their separation, they require support from a range of different professionals, but also from those around them and also from their employers. To provide this holistic support, our solution relies on a blend of people and technology in a model that can deliver support on a mass scale. And our solution looks at benefits to individuals, professions, and also to society. The Separation Guide supports early education, de-escalation, and timely advice on fairness. It encourages engagement in the law. It emphasises the importance of getting sound financial advice. It helps people recognise that there is no shame in getting emotional support through this life-changing event. And above all, it helps consumers understand the type of services that are most suited to them and their unique needs. So why did we start this? I'm sure everyone here knows someone who has been through a bad divorce. I started working on this about 6 years ago when I was in my early 40s, and I noticed plenty of people around me were going through separations, and sadly not many of them had a very good story to tell. I saw how this moment in people's lives impacted so much. It impacted their emotions, their health, their relationships, their kids, their finances, their work, and they had to consider how decisions they made during this time of incredible stress how it had such a big impact on their long-term future. A separation is incredibly private and not often spoken about. Many people silently suffer, sometimes for many years, without the help and support of people around them. And it's a feeling of emotional heartbreak. Often people have feelings of failure, isolation, and fear about what their future might look like when their relationship ends. And because it's so private and rarely spoken about, many enter separation blind, and they're ascending a steep learning curve of complex legal and financial terms, all at a time when they're feeling most vulnerable. I'm sure many of people have heard me say this before, but a separation is considered the second most stressful event of a lifetime, second only to the death of a loved one. So when you put it in that context, you realise what a big event it is. People are often forced to make these decisions about their financial future when they are least prepared and under incredible levels of stress. As I investigated the problem further, I found that every separation had a myriad of problems to solve across all aspects of life, and each problem required a different set of professionals with specialised skills and qualifications. These professionals often worked in silos, and they only solved one of their clients' many problems. What we also found is the regulatory frameworks that many of these professions work under restricted them from delivering the service that clients need and want in the time frame that they sometimes expect it to be delivered. And this caused frustration and resulted in many people turning away from seeking professional advice, but which we know then puts them sometimes at greater risk of long-term disadvantage. So when we're looking at all of this, it struck me that navigating the system was part of the problem and part of the complexity. So that's why we created the Separation Guide, to give people a starting point for a better separation aimed at making it simpler and less stressful. For individuals, our platform focuses on early education and de-escalation, helping them find more amicable pathways for their separation that cost less, are faster, and result in less impact on the individuals and also less impact on society. Our simple 3-minute Q&A educates, triages, and connects people to a range of educational resources and to professionals who can support them through each stage of their separation. And our platform also makes it easier for those professionals to collaborate with one another. For professionals, the platform streamlines their client acquisition and intake process, making it easier to service their clients and to provide a centralised intake that people can engage with multiple professionals without having to retell their story over and over again, which was another pain point that a lot of people cited. So far, we've helped over 320,000 Australians who have accessed our site for information and guidance. And over 20,000 of those have completed our Q&A and been through the educational program. As I said earlier, our goal was to create a platform that looked at the entire ecosystem and utilised the benefits of technology to create efficiencies, pulling together a national network of professionals to enable us to collectively deliver service on a mass scale through effective triaging. We envisaged a solution that supports all stakeholders and one that could deliver significant social impact on a global scale. As many in the room today will know, a bad divorce is linked to many societal impacts that are facing our country today. Mental health, such as anxiety and depression, physical health, family violence, suicide, addiction, crime, intergenerational impacts to children, financial poverty and homelessness, and productivity and absenteeism in the workplace. This ripple effect and problem is so broad. That's why separation and divorce is what I see as an environmental and social governance issue for Australians today, and it's estimated to cost $101 billion every year. So let's talk about the report. the State of Separation Impact Report. It aims to highlight the complexity of the problem each and every one of us here are trying to solve. That separation is more than just a personal problem, it's a societal problem. And in fact, in economic terms, it's those affected by the downstream that are impacted the most. Encouragingly, the research revealed that those that received early education and the right type of professional support had better outcomes on every metric. Cost, the time it took for them to reach a resolution, the stress they felt going through the process, their impact at work, and they received crucial information about fairness, and that means better outcomes for them and better outcomes for society. This report would not have been possible without contribution of many people, and I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge them. Kate Russell, who's our content strategy manager at the Separation Guide, who co-wrote this report with me. I said to a few people, this started as a one-page infographic, and if anyone who has read it, it's now a 65-page report, so you can imagine where Kate is. But thank you, Kate, for helping me dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and for your wonderful wizardry of words, as always. Paul Kelly, who's an external data analyst who analysed all the data, and there was a lot of data that came through for this report. My husband, Ben Harbinson, who is my co-founder and business partner, had me up in the wee hours of the night coming up with ideas for this report, but he also designed the report and led the design of the report, so thank you, Ben. The rest of the team at Thirst Creative, our marketing, brand and digital agency, who have done all of the design and the website for our report, and also thank you to Louisa, who's been here today to help us. And Jonathan from Andiron, who has helped with the PR and helping us get the word out there, which has been much appreciated. And also our team at the Separation Guide, who many are here today, and they work very tirelessly to help people every day. Bella, Justin, Sally, Rachel, Sonia, Michelle, and a few of our product team who weren't able to make it, Neil, Ran and Alistair. So the other people that are really important to reference here are our network members. And these are professions from all types of professionals that have joined us in helping to service this group. And their feedback has contributed to the anecdotal feedback that has surfaced into this report. So thank you very much for your support and commitment. I'd also like to thank Lavon from Deloitte for hosting us here today. It's a really great pleasure to have your space, and we really appreciate your support. And lastly, to our sponsors who have contributed to the data and the findings in the report, and that's Just Fund, Family Property, Smokeball, Setify, and Plenty. So let's go through some of the findings. The cost of living makes separation impossible for many. The report reveals a trend of rising interest rates tracking on a similar trajectory to rising level of separation inquiry. Now, it is common for divorce rates to rise in times of financial uncertainty, such as we're experiencing right now, so we expect to see this trend continue. The report shows a rising number of people who have separated and have to remain living under the one roof, and I'm sure many of you have read news articles about that. This figure reached up to 56% in December of last year, and it continues to remain high. It shows how more people need to borrow to fund their divorce. And with information from Plenty and Just Fund, we saw that there was a 55% increase in loan applications. The report also highlights the average cost of separation, which is sort of a bit of a myth. People don't really understand how much it truly costs. But from the loan providers, $25,000 was the most commonly requested loan value, noting that these people are typically engaged with lawyers when they are engaging with loans, more so than with mediators. The average cost for an acrimonious pathway was around $64,000, which is slightly lower than what had been reported in the past. Their figures also showed the highest loan value was $400,000, but I have certainly heard many stories of people with 7-figure divorces, so we know that that figure doesn't cover everything. In the impact survey, the average cost of all services, so when people's looking at their legal, financial and wellbeing costs over their separation, the average cost was $21,088 per person, and it took 555 days to reach a resolution from the date of separation through to having their separation agreement finalised. And I think we can all agree that's a really long time. So, next slide we want to talk about is acrimonious separation is on the rise. Now, we note that over the last few years, the world has been dealing with unprecedented uncertainty with COVID, natural disasters, war, and high levels of financial uncertainty. The rise in people living together while separated is a factor in increased tensions, with couples unable to get physical space they need. The data shows that as these tensions rise, so do the volume of those ending up in more acrimonious outcomes. Now, our Q&A tracks the level of acrimonious outcomes versus amicable outcomes, and we define those as mediation or do-it-yourself type separation agreements. And the results showed that there was a rising level of conflict in households in 2022 as the year went on, with people pushed into fight and flight mode more often, and how that was causing more people to end up in those less harmonious pathways for their separation. There were 3 key themes that we explored here. One was the emotional state of people when they're doing the Q&A. So it's broadly agreed that you cannot make sensible decisions when you are in fight and flight mode, and I'm looking at Sabina, a psychologist here. Getting into the right emotional mindset is so important before you start entering into those other conversations. The risk of increased tension flowing into family violence cases. This was another area we explored. So the report noted a 17.4% increase in people seeking information about family violence. But I do want to note here that a lot of people don't self-identify with some of the non-physical forms of family violence, so we do acknowledge that that number could be much higher, and I know Fiona's got some statistics on that, and we'll discuss in the panel. The importance of early education in helping people with communication techniques and also reducing the fear of the unknown. And we find that a lot when people go through the Q&A, and I can see Bella nodding here. She speaks to people all the time. They take a deep sigh when they've finished the Q&A, because it's like, oh, okay, I think I know what I can do next. And it's this fear of the unknown that causes a lot of stress and tension in people's lives. What we also found is that 100% of people who used the Q&A, the Separation Guide's Q&A, said that the guide showed them the benefits of an amicable separation and to help keep them on a low conflict path. And we see that as very important, because I'm sure every person in this room will agree that an acrimonious divorce doesn't serve anyone well. Engagement in the law is changing. Now, this was interesting. We saw a lot of consumers wanting to take control of the legal process and engaging more in legal technology to help them get part of the way there themselves. So as reported in The Age last week, we saw a growing rate of people attempting a DIY divorce, yet the report found that many of these people are risking long-term financial disadvantage, as 42.5% of those people were primary caregivers, and they accepted a 50-50 agreement without seeking any advice on the fairness of that arrangement. In the report, we urge people to consider their short-term and long-term needs, because that's very important. And in this section, we spoke about the important role that legal technology also plays in streamlining processes and reducing costs to consumers. In the legal sector, we saw a great uptake in adoption of legal technology, so a 51.5% increase in legal technology adoption, which is a positive impact for firms, because they're able to service more clients more efficiently. And that also was resulting in a 43.5% benefit of improvement in time to close a matter. And that's a great thing for consumers, because timeliness certainly was something mentioned as a pain point. We saw how putting mediators at the front of the queue was yielding positive results, as more people were made aware of the benefits of mediation. This also is a big win, and I know many mediators are in the room here today will agree with that. We've seen guided separation model adopted across the country, and this is a model where we put amicable couples will meet with a legally qualified mediator, an FDRP, together, and then they are paired with, or then they meet with independent legal advice at the end, and that's where they have a fairness check and have their documents, drafting of legally binding orders at the end. And that's a flip of what is the usual traditional model. So we were seeing some great outcomes from that. And again, emphasising again how early education really helps. Women at risk of financial disadvantage. So unfair outcomes create long-term disadvantage. The report highlighted how more women than men were seeking financial advice, and how the traditional wealth planning model does not serve the needs of consumers who really need financial coaching and budgeting support. We highlighted how women were less confident around financial disclosure and the superannuation time bomb for primary caregivers. We raised awareness of a few important factors about superannuation. One is that it's often the second largest asset that people hold outside of the family home. Two, how many people are unaware that it's actually part of the asset pool at all, and let alone the disparity between a male and a female superannuation balance at that typical age when people are separating, and it's close to $30,000 difference. We also saw that people don't realise that in order to divide your superannuation, you typically need a legal professional to help you with that. So we raised some concerns around the DIY approaches and how that really works with that major asset. All of these factors raise a difficult question for primary caregivers going through a separation, which is how do you weigh up the cost of getting legal advice versus how much it might add to your super balance in the future at retirement. And that's an important one for people to consider, really about paying the cost to get legal advice, but to help you in the future. And we highlighted how many women were at greater risk of financial poverty and homelessness, begging the question about the role that society should play in helping these women access legal advice, so they don't become a greater burden on society in years to come. The missing middle is certainly a topic for discussion, which I'm sure we will bring up today. And the last point was around businesses and professions, the forgotten impact. Many people are not aware of the impact that separation has at work. Obviously, people are quite often silently suffering through that. But measured in economic terms, it's actually employers that are bearing the highest cost, and it's estimated at around $35 billion every year. We shared how much separation impacted people at work, and it affected their ability to concentrate. We talked how people felt more mentally and physically unwell, more anxious and more depressed at work. And 32% of people we surveyed took time off to attend appointments with their professionals. 17% of people ended up leaving their job as a result of their separation, which is a big cost to employers. We reported some of the pressure points in particular professions, and I'm sure many in the family law sector will see this in their own practice. But interestingly, health professionals featured quite highly in this survey. So doctors, surgeons, nurses, high levels disproportionate to population. The education sector was another that was impacted, so teachers and university workers. Banking and finance is a common one. Professional services, IT, mining, oil and gas workers, emergency service workers, pilots and public servants was another one that came through. There are also some concerning work factors that may contribute to relationship breakdown, such as high-pressured work environment. That's why emergency service workers often have higher rates of divorce. Travelling away from the family unit, that can be a big pressure point. People that work 4-day on or 4-day off work rosters, and people that are in fly-in, fly-out workers, so that mining, oil and gas area is quite prominent as well. And with this, we spoke about options available to employers to be able to support their staff members through this challenging time. The awareness that greater flexibility may be required when going through a period of transitioning into two homes, and that with employers can look at providing specialised support through EAP-style programs that may reduce the risk of their employees having a bad divorce. So the data showed that those that don't receive that early education and that were not seeking the right type of advice were the ones that had poorer outcomes to society and to the workplace. And what we find is that these types of programs actually remove some of the barriers of people reaching out for advice, because often financial barrier or dipping into the marital asset pool can be a risk for some people, and that's what is stopping them from taking that advice that they need. So somewhere that they can confidentially access that is quite important. And the research also showed that it was often those in the very early stages of separation that suffered the most from depression and isolation. So this is often before they've even told their own partner, their family, they're very alone, let alone telling their workplace. So again, that being able to access information confidentially and get the support that they need is very important. And I know Sabina will cover some of the impacts on the workplace today. So that's enough from me. I will hand back to Tamara, who will introduce our wonderful panel for today. Thank you.